Canada, America.
Do not enter.
And the Canadians shut it down, right?
Yeah, you still can jump it.
That's what, 20 grand to the cartel these days?
Roughly 500 people a week just for this segment.
That's all new, huh?
Well, they're probably out there now.
The biggest uptick in crossings in history.
I just find it funny how we get New York City taxis to pick these guys up.
Oh wow, this is post-apocalyptic. So how do you feel about it?
The truth no longer matters. It's who's fastest. And then the truth will come out eventually, but the truth will be a footnote to the page 9. There would be law enforcement here and people would illegally go to enter and they're like, can't you stop? I'm like, no, we don't have the laws to do that.
So just cat and mouse. Different than the Southern, much different feeling. Major, how far are we from the border right now?
Probably about 1.5 miles from the border.
Different than the Southern, much different feeling.
Yeah, no,
First
it's
impressions.
There's definitely
Green and cold.
Huge contrast. It's not that cold. It's 64. It's nice. It's going to snow next week. It's definitely going to be a stark contrast to the Southwest. I mean, there's still the same type of people, the good people that want to live their normal daily lives. But up here, the population is probably a little bit less. And so I think a lot of these people are worried about the idea that maybe they're going to be the target of this stuff.
And so what's great about the sheriff departments is that Customs and Border Protection won't speak on camera.
Yeah.
Police departments, I've gotten in with one in the last 4 years after a lot of trying.
Well, I think
they're not going to speak on camera.
They're at will. Everybody has to get approval to speak.
Not sheriffs.
That's the difference. The sheriff was elected by the people. He answers to the people.
So you think in Clinton County here, a lot of people don't know what's going on?
I think they're well versed with what's going on. They don't understand the totality of it. I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people in the state don't really understand. If you pose it whether it's an immigration issue, a lot of people here don't know what's really going on. When you talk about the crime issue, a lot of people here really don't know what's going on.
Right.
You could ask people, like, how are things in Clinton County? They'll say it's great.
Totality is the best word for all of this, because the border story, which I've been on the southern border a bunch, there are a lot of moving parts. It's very complex. It's turned totally political, and each side takes its set of facts and uses them, right?
Absolutely.
And there's a lot to it, right?
Homer Simpson said it best. Facts are meaningless. They can be used to prove anything.
Oh, are we looking at Canada?
Canada's right there. If you look out in the middle of the water, you'll see a floating sign past that little tiny boat near the big one with a crane.
Yep.
That sign says, you're entering Canada.
So that boat going north is going into Canada right now.
Yep. And when you come south, if you look down to your right, you'll see that's the dock where they need to check in.
And does that system work pretty well?
I got to be honest, I believe any system that we have could be exploited. You know, if there's a will, there's a way. That's that constant cat and mouse between those that are breaking the law and those that are trying to enforce the law. So does the system work? Yeah, the system works because we're friendly with Canada, right? We love working with them. We have commerce with them. So it's not a adversarial border. It's not the DMZ where we're sitting here lockstep against a warring nation. And these are our friends. And so the system works great for the Canadian people and the U.S. people going back and forth. Does it mean it's not being exploited? No, it doesn't mean that. Of course it can be exploited. So right here, this is all New York. And this house right here with the concrete blocks, that's Canada.
Oh, wow.
And they put concrete blocks across there because people were driving through their yard and just running across the border. Let me stop right here.
Oh, this is fascinating. So here we are. We're looking at the border right here.
That is the border.
And so this house was fed up with the cars going through their property?
Well, I don't know if it was the house per se that was fed up with it, but the governments are.
So that right there is...
That's the fix.
Can I step on it?
You can. I'll go with you. I mean, we may cause an international incident, but...
All right. So since this is a 5,500-mile long border, and it's like farmer's field to road, that's not an easy job.
It's not an easy job, and the Border Patrol is absolutely outnumbered up here. They don't have enough staff to really do it. It's tough.
Yeah, and so people usually don't think of the Canadian border being an issue because it's not like Canadians are fleeing to America.
Exactly, that's what we were just talking about, right? We get along with Canada. We love Canada.
Right. So the economic advantage, while there could be some for people, but we're somewhat in parity as far as economies. Like you can live a good life in Canada.
Yep.
We're south of the border. You're coming up from Honduras or Nicaragua.
Yep.
It's different. But from what I understand now, it's a lot of Indians and a lot of Mexicans that are getting tourist visas into Canada and then coming down, right?
They easily just travel down. They get dropped off within a half mile of the border, and then they just got to go for it.
And the reason I'm up here is because the numbers have spiked this summer. Yep. This summer and last summer have been super busy, right?
They're pretty much roughly 500 people a week just for this sector. That's a lot of people for a place with no infrastructure to handle it, a place where the Border Patrol basically doesn't have a lot of people on. They're relying a ton on technology and support from, law enforcement partners.
But you literally could hide in a cornfield.
They do.
And run across.
Yes, they do.
Like, just hang out in the corn.
Yeah.
Look both ways. Okay, no cars coming.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of people that are giving themselves up. Those people that want to come here, they want to get processed. They want to get a court date in 5 years or so. They absolutely will give themselves up. So those people are. You'll get a 911 call. We're dealing with that right now. Hey, I'm tired. Come get me. And so, the county here since June had close to 1,200 911 calls for people saying, oh, I'm in the woods, come get me. And those people want to get picked up by Border Patrol. They want to get processed. The problem is there's people that don't. And that's the concern for us. There's groups of people that are low crawling through the fields, the people that are carrying things, the people that are smuggling the drugs and stuff back and forth. They don't want to get caught. And if you're coming into the country and you don't want to get caught, why?
Right. Okay. So, I should have unpacked that better. How the system works now, if you walk over the border, say you're from India, you got a tourism visa to Canada, you fly into Montreal, you come down, you go over, you want Customs and Border Protection to get you.
Yes.
Because you get you claim asylum, whether that's legitimate or not. Yep. And then the courts are so backed up, that case is not going to be processed for years. You're technically legal to be in the United States.
A lot of them get released.
They get released into the U.S. And we're going to go into sort of the root of that, right? Because they're not hanging out here, they're going to New York City.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's the marker.
That is the marker.
We probably got some poison ivy here, right?
Probably.
Okay. That's hospital for me, so I'll show you from here. That's the marker. Canada, America. That's how you know. That's it.
Do not enter.
And so this wasn't a problem years ago because the policies were set up where you couldn't just fly into Canada, walk over and get asylum. Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. There's no issue with the Canadian people. So this was perfectly okay. We don't go into their cornfield. They don't come across. There's a port right there. There's a port right over there. And you just come through the right way. It was never an issue. Now people are exploiting the laws of Canada, coming from whatever country they want to infiltrate the U.S., and they exploit their laws, their way of doing it, and they take advantage of the border as it stands.
Okay, what nationalities are you seeing? We have Indian
right now,
and Mexican, right? The big ones?
Senegalese and Indians are the biggest group, and the Mexicans have actually kind of dropped off a little bit.
Okay.
But again, this only accounts for those that we know.
Okay, Senegalese, that's what, 20 grand to the cartel these days?
Yeah, I think so.
To pull that off?
Yeah.
When I was in the southern border, that was the going rate from West Africa at that time to make that work.
Yeah.
20 grand. So no one's getting in without a lot of money.
No, and here's the thing is, we understand there's some people fleeing these horrific events in their home country. We know that, right?
Yep.
We absolutely know that. We understand that. And again, it's America. We're supposed to accept those people and say, come to us. We get that. There's a right way and a wrong way. But there's some people that are coming down here that I wonder really what they're fleeing from, right? The clothing they wear, what they're doing, some of it doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to be those that are distressed, and that's the part that makes us struggle as a community and a country is you've got the means to get from where you're going to Montreal and then to get down here after paying off the coyotes or the cartels or whoever's doing it. Are you really fleeing something? And so that's the question that keeps coming up to some people. It's just wondering how it is you have the means to do that, but you're still in such distress that you have to come into the country this way.
Yes, sir. If you're up by the line road in Bay, we're going to have some blocks sent over there. We're just going to continue to the east of Bay and Line.
Border Patrol wants to be able to cover the border better. I think most Americans want them to cover the border better. They just need the resources to do that. It's a lot of land to cover. So, I mean, it can't just be all personnel, right? We don't have enough people to put somebody every 5 feet holding hands to make sure nobody comes across. That's unrealistic. But a combination of the technology and the personnel and the patrols, yeah, I think they can do a different job as long as their administration lets them.
Right. And I do want to drop some of the numbers because I did some research last night on the northern border. Northern border, 163,000 apprehensions this year so far. Last year, 2023, 189,000 apprehensions. 2022, 109,000 apprehensions. 2021, 27,000 apprehensions. So it's really just ticked up, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's no other way around it. The numbers speak for themselves, and you can spin it any way you want.
This is Customs Border. This is CBP's website and numbers on this. Southern border right now, this year, 1,926,000 apprehensions. Yep. And so that's where there's been physical contact or visual contact, right? But it's the gotaways that is the unknown number, right?
Yeah, so that's the number of apprehensions.
Yeah.
That does not include the amount of times where there's been a group of suspected migrants come through and they fled and then people did not chase them. This is not the amount of people where they've seen them, where they have intelligence or they have technology that states that there's people there and then they don't find them. Yeah. Those people we can't account for. That's the biggest concern is, yeah, we had a huge amount of apprehensions, but the ever-present fear is those that we don't know who they are. There is evil people that are lurking. There's people that have intent to do harm to the U.S. and the citizens of the U.S., and they're going to find the easiest way in. And right now, this may be it. So we talk about this creation of the boogeyman where we're embellishing stories and trying to make it look worse and stuff like that. I don't know. I think that's maybe something that people that don't want to admit that the boogeyman actually exists, because you can't vet who those people are. You don't know if they're families. You don't know if they're gang members. You don't know if they're foreign agents. You don't know who they are because they got away. That should make you a little nervous. That should make you wonder why it is they're doing that. Why are they trying so hard to avoid detection when these other people are giving themselves up? That should really make you give pause and say, okay, we should probably talk about that. It's not creating the boogeyman, it's talking about the reality. For the longest time, the northbound traffic, they would come up this way, and it got so bad to where the Canadians actually had to build a processing center on the other side right here.
Okay, so is this active right now?
No, they took down all their buildings because they changed their laws, and I'm not entirely sure how they did, but they changed their laws to basically state that you're going to be arrested if you come across.
So when was this?
This would have been closed down last, probably, I think, year and a half, 2 years.
There we go. So they'd come down the road here in Canada.
They would come here to go to here.
They're going from America to the...
This was, yes. And that's where they set this up. They had a whole encampment here. Yeah.
So there is some of that going on too.
This was huge a couple years ago, yeah.
Going from the U.S. to Canada.
Yep. And the difference is Canadian officials, they can actually stop you from entering America. They have a law against that. Whereas the Americans, we don't have a law that allows us to stop people from trying to illegally enter Canada.
Okay.
So the Canadians, their border officials were quite upset with that because there would be law enforcement here occasionally and people would illegally go to enter and they're like, can't you stop them? Like, no, we don't have the laws to do that.
So sort of like our southern border, they're frustrated with the Mexican government not stopping them coming into the U.S.?
Yep.
Okay. That's interesting. So the Canadians put the kibosh on this.
Yep.
I mean, it's still pretty easy to get over, though. I mean,
it is, and I mean, there's just so many places.
There it is. Okay, so, I mean, technically, if I ran over there right now, let's just do a hypothetical.
Yep.
I'm going down that street and I come back. What would you do as law enforcement?
Well, one, I would tell you not to cross the border in the first place, because that would create a whole lot of problems, right? Because each country has its own technology and places. You would technically be incurring into Canadian soil. They could come arrest you for that. Coming back through, then you would be coming into the country illegally. Then Border Patrol would have to come deal with you. Now, you're a U.S. citizen, right? Which poses a special issue because you technically can't be stopped from coming into the country. So I would have to call somebody who's not me to figure that out, because I got to tell you, that's confusing. But please, for the love of God, don't go across the border and then come back. You're going to just bust my chops.
And then what if I did it on a Native American reservation on the border? Then that would add more complexity.
If you made it back off that, that would be, then we'd figure that one out. There's a reservation, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Reservation, where half of it is on the Canadian side and the U.S. side, and they can actually go back and forth. And that's a huge hub for cross-border smuggling, because they don't have the same regulations getting across. So people take advantage of that.
Okay, so that still continues?
Yeah.
Okay, and you were telling me that Glock, is this a Glock?
No, this is a SIG 320.
Okay, but you were telling me a Glock 19.
Any pistol pretty much will fetch thousands and thousands of dollars in Canada.
You said it would be 6,000 maybe up there?
Roughly.
And that would be $600 to buy here?
Yeah.
So literally you could pack up a bunch of guns and make a ton of money.
Put it in a backpack, which has happened, and you smuggle it north across the border.
It's hard to get guns in Canada?
Yes. Police officers in Canada also can't carry their guns home. Whereas here in the States, we have laws. I can carry my gun anywhere in the U.S.
Right. So everyone that gets one of these guns over, obviously it's a criminal element to it, and people are doing illegal things with their guns and shouldn't have them. And Sir, the border's right over there, but what's going on in your neighborhood right now?
Nothing much goes on right through here. Once in a while they come through in this area right there.
Okay.
But most of the time it's up this way, maybe half a mile to a mile. Just after you get past the tree line up here.
Okay.
Where the fields are open.
Yep.
They come through there. And then when you go this way and you go just past the crest of the hill there, they come through in that area there.
Is there much going on right now? Many coming over or not so much?
Not that I've seen any lately, but a couple weeks ago they had them. We had a couple sitting out here on the corner waiting for the Border Patrol to come. And they sat there for like an hour and a half.
How does the community feel about all this? You guys talk about it, or you just sort of stay to yourselves and not a big deal?
We talk about it if we see some action going on, or somebody's coming across or anything. We pretty much keep in contact with each other.
Does it mess with the safety or not really?
It hasn't so far.
Okay.
So, you never know, but gotta kind of watch and keep your doors locked, but otherwise.
Did you used to keep your doors locked?
We've only been here 5 years. In the beginning we didn't, but more so now because you see more activity coming across.
Okay, so when you first moved here, the doors were open, and now you lock them?
They were pretty much open then, even though we knew it wasn't as bad. And of course, at that time, they were picking them up and sending them back. Now they just pick them up and then they let them go after I guess they sign them in down at the Border Patrol down there.
Okay, at the time they would send them back?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. They'd send them back when we first moved.
Interesting.
But they don't do that now.
Thank you.
They're out. Well, they're probably out there now.
1B14.
So this is one of the main veins, as in they come over there, and where we're going right now is this mini mart where a lot of the transport, from my understanding, brings them down to New York City.
One of the places, the main mountain mart is in Plattsburgh. That used to be the bus station. That used to be a huge location. But any of the stores, they congregate. They congregate at Stewart's and Champlain, and the people see it. There's been stories of people going into the store here, grabbing goods, and then walking back into the woods. It's just something they got to deal with.
you work here.
Yep.
What's it like these days?
It's actually like a little quiet compared to earlier.
Earlier as in when?
About a month ago.
A month ago it was busy?
Oh, yeah. We'd pull in at 4 in the morning, and they'd be sitting on the back lawn. A whole bunch of them.
and then what, waiting for you to open or what?
Yeah, that and waiting to find a ride.
Okay, so the rides were coming up here and then bringing them where?
We never called for rides. The only people we'd call for was the sheriffs.
So how do you feel about it?
I don't want to say because it would not be very good.
Because it's such a triggering issue for so many people.
It don't feel safe.
Don't feel safe. I think most Americans are like, we're all for immigration, but just an orderly, safer way to do it than having to show up at work at 4 in the morning and have to wonder.
Especially because you got to lock your doors now.
You lock your doors now?
Oh, yeah.
At your house?
Yep. Vehicles, everything, because we get some that go in our woods and try to put up tents.
I used to work the early shift. They were always here, but
yeah.
So it's stopped though.
Yeah, it's actually calmed down quite a bit.
That's great news.
Yeah.
So do you know why it's calmed down?
Because of those guys right there in the border.
They're doing their jobs.
Oh yeah, they're cracking down.
So you guys really support the sheriffs here?
Oh yeah. Yep. Because the instant we call, they're instantly here.
They're here.
Yep.
Sweet.
Good guys.
Oh yeah.
That's what you want.
Yep.
We get sheriffs, we get border, we get custom all the time in the store. They're always coming in and grab something, so we're pretty protected here. I think so.
What about you guys? You should be scared of you or no?
No, I work at the plastic store for backup when they needed help down there, so I dealt with most of the immigrants that were sent there.
Okay, so what's your experience?
I hated them.
Why?
They were mean, and with the bathroom, otherwise, like, you would put out of order because you had to clean it. They didn't care. They'd go in there. Like, when you're only one person on shift, you can't clean the bathroom and try to run the register at the same time. I didn't like being there as a girl by myself, but...
What's the feeling of people in Morse right now?
They're worried about what they're going to do with the border. All these people just walking in their backyards. Because you shouldn't have to feel like when we're coming to work in the morning, we shouldn't have to watch what we were doing. Because I would have to call a guy that would work with us in the morning. He'd meet me here just so I'd have backup in the door. Because one day we were walking in and he looked back and there was 3 people coming around the store and the girl was trying to lure him out. So I already unlocked the door and I was waiting and he hurried up and told me to lock it. He was like, I don't want you to unlock the door right now. Because he was trying to deal with what they were going on outside. So I started calling him every morning. And we meet here together and we walk in together.
All right. Thank you, ladies. Ladies, take care.
You too.
Oh, they're sweet. You know what they said? Traffic has been down the last month or so.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you my reason why I think so. So traffic has gone down a little bit. Not a ton. It's the type of traffic. So more Indians, less Mexicans. But my personal opinion is this. We're going through the election season right now. And the thought process is with some that if Trump becomes elected, he's going to shut the borders down and he's going to kick those out that are already here. So now would not be the time to come in because you're just going to get booted, right? They can go through the backlog, but I think it's highly unlikely. I believe our election has a huge impact on what's going on with the numbers.
Okay, what about the theory that, well, now you can still pull it off, and if Trump gets into office, maybe the border becomes, the policies become much firmer and it's harder to get over. What about that?
Well, it may be harder to get over, but are you going to risk $20,000 to come here just for a month or two and then potentially get caught and shipped out? It could also be the law changes in Canada, the visa program. It could be a lot of things.
And also the cartels, usually, you know, the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. So on the southern border, some sectors are busy at times, others are quiet, and then it always sort of changes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for them, it's become more of a business, and maybe they are looking for a new chance, new opportunity, but it's that cat and mouse game. They're just going to constantly probe new areas. The only reason it's so lucrative and easy here is because of the border roads in Canada being near our roads. If you go out west, you may not find them to be in such close proximity.
Yeah, and you have a big city to fly into.
Yeah. So that's the state police going to a complaint locally.
About what?
It looks like somebody kicked in a door, but it's probably a domestic type thing.
Is that what most of the crime is, domestic stuff?
Not so much most, but there's a lot of it. There's definitely a lot of domestic issues up here. Any area, you're going to find pockets of economically depressed groups. You're going to find people that are poor, right? You're going to find people that have problems with alcohol. You're going to have people that have problems with drugs. And all those situations bring about further complications with the law. Property crimes, domestics, I mean robberies. I mean that stuff happens. It's really a socioeconomic issue. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. You can be rich and be into drugs, sure, absolutely. But what you're willing to do to get those drugs, probably not the same as those people that are poor that want the drugs. Because the people that are poor that want the drugs don't have the finances, don't have the means. So they're willing to break the law and do other things in order to get that. And that is what compounds, and it just keeps expanding.
So what are you seeing in law enforcement, you know, from your perspective now versus 5 years ago? Like, what are you dealing with? A lot of people don't get your guys' perspective, so.
It's funny, when I came on the job, 2005, I got hired. And I was once told by the current undersheriff of the next county where I used to work that I would never draw my weapon. And I still remember those words, and part of me wishes he was right, because that's not the case. The world's changed. We see people carrying guns. We see people that are willing to do some pretty brutal things. I don't want to say that the criminal element is so bad to where you can't walk on the street. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but there's enough bad stuff going on up here to where people have no idea, right?
Even up here, we're pretty rural. Yeah. So we're talking Plattsburgh, right?
Yeah, Plattsburgh.
Which is what, 20,000, 30,000 people?
The city of Plattsburgh is about 20. Clinton County as a whole is about 82, 84. If you subscribe to the broken window theory, it's the idea that these lesser crimes that we're allowing to happen because of, bail reform, law changes, we're allowing these kids, because of raise the age, to do things that we didn't let them do. And that emboldens them, and they go out and they do these other crimes, and we're not addressing it, and it just grows and grows. The same idea of the broken window theory is, somebody can come along and break a window in a nice house, and if you don't address that window, then everybody thinks it's okay to break the next window, and then the next window, and in the end, the house is completely destroyed because you're not addressing that smaller problem. We've had some sort of movement in law enforcement the last 4 or 5 years to where overnight law enforcement became the bad guy.
Right.
And we're now the problem. It wasn't so much that people were breaking the law, it's the fact that we were holding them accountable. And don't get me wrong, every profession's got these people that are just complete morons and they go out and do stupid things. And we have, and we've witnessed it, and we don't appreciate that either, and we hold them accountable as well. But law enforcement as a whole in the last 5 years has been vilified.
Yeah.
And so the world has changed in the fact that there's more crime because there's less teeth in law enforcement. There's less ability to enforce these laws. And people are more emboldened because here in New York State with bail reform, you get appearance ticket after appearance ticket after appearance ticket. It takes a while before you can get in front of a judge, before a judge will actually hold you accountable. Versus before, you could arraign somebody that you knew was a danger or something like that. That doesn't happen so much anymore.
Right.
So there's more crime. There's more willingness to break the law. And there's less immediate repercussions, so therefore these people will continue to do it.
Right. What's raise the age?
Raise the age was changing the age of criminal liability. For years, you used to tell people that if you were 16, you're responsible for what you did, and there's some science behind it to show that people of younger age, they don't have the ability to make the processing decisions.
Yeah.
So therefore, they raised the age of criminal liability through 2 different years of movement. So now an 18-year-old is not treated like an 18-year-old. An 18-year-old is treated like a child, and therefore they're not responsible for the same level of offenses. And it's just been a movement. It's complex on what you can charge somebody, at what age, and what for. And I mean, the lawyers have gone through it, cops have gone through it, and you literally need a flow chart to identify what you can do with each person. Okay. And it never really was like that. And that in itself is creating a bigger problem. This particular road, when I first transferred here, it was around 2008, a woman ended up getting into a domestic with her husband and ended up shooting him in the back with a small caliber weapon. Apparently, you shouldn't argue. with your spouse.
Do those things weigh on you? Like you go down this road again and it brings you back to that, or?
I mean, that's everywhere. Yeah, so I've lived a pretty rough career. I remember taking a shovel and it was dead of winter. There was a fatal accident, and using a shovel to help remove this poor guy's head from the road. Yeah, you don't forget those things. I remember picking up body parts. I remember, I'm a firm believer every scene you go to, you lose a little bit of yourself. But yeah, you remember that. And do you keep doing it? Yeah, you keep doing it, but it doesn't change it. You can't ignore it. There's been this conversation that cops in their career, and firefighters and medics in their career will go through so much trauma. It's akin to being in a war zone beyond a rotation for a tour of duty. I've seen a lot. And again, I live in Mayberry, So if me in Mayberry, where I was told I was never going to draw my gun, I can only assume, the people that are working in a higher tempo area have certainly more than what I do. Right here is one of the areas where migrants like to come down through.
Okay, so that tree line out there is Canada?
Just north of the tree line.
Just north of the tree line. So this is one of the big roads.
It is.
Is it a daytime thing, a nighttime thing, or it doesn't matter?
It really used to be just nighttime. Now there's a group that doesn't mind coming across, giving themselves up. So what we're running into now is the groups of people that are coming down, and as soon as they get across the border, they're calling 911 saying, hey, I'm here, come get me.
Yeah, and so that's where it gets confusing, and unfortunately most of our media hasn't unpacked the entirety, and I can't do it in one video because there's a lot to it, but that's the big sticking point, right? Most people, from my understanding, can claim asylum. Now, is that a real asylum case or not is the question, right? So in certain jurisdictions that I've been at on the southern border, the authorities I've spoken with, the vast majority are economic migrants. They're coming for the opportunity, which, hey, if the green light's on, I'm going to do it too if I'm in that position, right? Courts are backed up for years, so they get in. They're quasi-legal, but in some instances, and actually many, they can't work. They don't have papers to work. So that's when you have a New York situation, or I'm going to Massachusetts soon, where there are hotels filled with migrants, paid for by the taxpayer, food, healthcare, everything, shelter. And that's where a lot of the friction lies, and it's a frustration for everyone, because why does the local citizen have to pay for that? We have enough problems with homeless in the country. We're incentivizing more to come.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these people coming just want to work. There's bad apples, of course. I don't agree with the whole, it's some army that's going to assemble on the U.S. side. I've seen most of these people are just they just want to work and an opportunity. There we go. The squirrel's making the run from Canada. There it goes. And so that's where the sticking point lies. I don't think either side of the media will really unpack that clearly. It's easy to say everyone is coming from the worst conditions ever and we should accept everyone in, but that's not honest. It's not what's happening. No. Right? And as we talked about earlier, you're coming from West Africa, you need 20 grand. At least you did. You need a lot. And at the time I was in the southern border from Honduras and up, it was 6 grand. Nobody just gets in.
No.
You're paying off. You're paying people off. Then the darkness of it comes when you have the guy that paid 6 grand, doesn't have the full 6 grand. The cartel said, okay, you can pay me in installments through Western Union or whatever. And then the family is sort of hostage back in the home country until he pays up. So he's almost like living this slavery type life in the U.S. where you can't work legally. You have to be under the table. You might have to take horrible conditions to do so. So the whole point...
Making a fraction of what somebody else who was doing that job would actually make if it was above the table.
And then it puts pressure on the lower end of American society because it lowers the wages. And also the migrants are going to communities where the poorer people live, and so the rent prices go up because you have more heads in the community. Doesn't affect the rich people. So these are just some basics that don't really get explained.
And everything compounds.
And everything compounds. And we're at this this point where people are just, if they're dealing with it firsthand, they're really fed up.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at anybody who's reporting on it, look at the issues of all these people that fluctuate into the country, and they're going to these locations where you're talking about. One of the things they're not really talking a lot about is the crime that comes from putting those people in the same areas. I mean, New York City's facing that left and right. They have homicides, they have fights, they have all these different things that are happening, and they can happen anywhere. But the point is, they're happening very much around these migrant centers. And people have to ask the question, well, why is that happening? And the same thing I brought up with you about the drug trade here. If people don't have the means to get what they need or want, they're going to find a way to do that. And oftentimes that's through crime. If we're letting them come into the country, but we're not giving them the means to earn while being here, while they wait, they're going to do things to get the things they need. Whether it's stealing from the store, whether it's robbing somebody else, whether it's finding other ways. I mean, selling food, the open air markets that are happening, granted, not here locally, but in the bigger metropolitan areas, it's going to keep causing these problems. It's going to keep creating these little nuances that are going to affect the daily life of the people that live in the area, like you'd said, and the people that have to go through it.
And they're told by the cartels that here's all this opportunity going to work.
Yep.
And a lot of times they can't. And so it's illegal work. It could be prostitution.
Yep.
I mean, what goes on at the southern border, I don't know if it's happening here, but, you know, they flood the zone. The cartel floods the zone one area. Our Customs Border Protection gets on it. Quarter mile down, that's when the fentanyl goes through.
Yeah,
the sex trafficking, all the dark stuff.
It's the same the same stuff happens here. I mean, if you get a pickup load where Border Patrol moves in and local law enforcement, you're inevitably tying up resources. There's nothing you can do about it. Those resources are tied up, and then you're going to get other groups trying to cross.
And then for your residents that live here, maybe there's an emergency and you guys are more tied up dealing with these issues you shouldn't have to be dealing with.
It's just vastness. That's all you can think about if you look at the border. I mean, just look as far as you can see. It is huge. You have to think about that and the magnitude of how do you police it? I mean, there's ways to do it, and it's being done, right? Technology is a huge friend, but that's pretty daunting. And imagine trying to do that with reduced staffing in an age when nobody wants to get in law enforcement and everybody's trying to hire and you just don't get people. So you gotta fight those battles too.
Is that the case here?
I think it's the case anywhere. I mean, I think there's very few agencies that across the country that are not struggling to hire people. Very few.
So they just don't want to get into it because over the last few years, they've been put under the bus to some degree. You know, it's a lot of pressure. I mean, I can't imagine going out and dealing with the heaviness of society. Say you have a family, you got to leave and deal with that every day, and then you might not get admiration or respect for doing the hard yards.
It's not even the admiration or the respect, it's the fair shake, right? There's no fair shake anymore. In law enforcement, you can't make a mistake. And we've removed the idea that police are human, right? You have to be perfect. And don't get me wrong, there have been some absolutely heinous acts by people in uniform, right? Complete scumbags. We know that. But in law enforcement now, they feel like we're out to get them. And there's this us-them mentality, meaning society as a whole.
Who's they, though?
The society. I think that's what it is.
I don't think most people feel that way.
They may not, but that's what's being represented. And now
that's the image we're seeing.
We're enacting laws and all these things against law enforcement, and we're doing it under the guise of open law enforcement. We're doing it under the guise of we're trying to build relationships. And I don't know if that's the case, but how many people do you think want to go out and deal with the worst that society has to offer? People that are carrying guns, people that are breaking the law, but you have to be perfect. And you get a split second to make that decision. Right. The same decision that it's going to take lawyers and other people weeks to determine whether you were right or wrong, and you get 30 seconds. The same people that tell us that we're horrible, right? We have media people that are talking about cops, this or that, and we put them through the same scenarios through law enforcement training, and they fail just as much, if not more. And yet they're so quick to judge. Would you really want that? Knowing that the truth doesn't come out, because the truth no longer matters. It's who's fastest, who gets it out quick, who's the first. And then the truth will come out eventually, but the truth will be a footnote to the page 9. And do you really want to get into that? No, that's why nobody wants to be a cop.
So we're going to attract the worst officers.
I don't think we're going to attract the worst, but we're certainly dropping our standards to fill the ranks.
Say you have to fill 10 positions and you have 500 applicants, you can take the best of those 500. If you have 10 positions and you have 10 applicants,
you are definitely hiring people now that you wouldn't have hired 10 years ago.
That's my point.
And here's the thing. We talked about law enforcement being overburdened before and all these other things. You know what we're doing now? We're doing the same job plus more, but we're doing it with less people, working more hours, which is exactly what they said they didn't want to happen.
Which is going to burn them out.
Yes.
And if I've been dealing with, I had a BS day all day long.
You're going to make a bad choice.
And then say, you know, you have a fight with your wife in the morning, whatever it might be. You're going into work with stress. You're dealing with the dregs of society. The last part of the day, someone comes at you physically. I don't know how you do it.
I mean, you try to do it the right way. Luckily, we work with a lot of people that are doing the job for the right reasons, and we're doing it out here because we're trying to save the world, right? You've been in my office, you saw Superman everywhere. The whole point is because I think I can save the world, and that's what I want, is I want people to like mindset. It's purpose
and meaning. That's what you get in your work.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't have that in their lives.
Some people think I'm mentally ill because of the dedication that I have to the agency and to the job. But at the same point, I've been on the other side, right? I've lived a life where I grew up poor, single mother. I've been in jail before I got out of high school.
You've been in jail?
Absolutely 100%.
For what?
I broke into a bunch of summer camps. And the point is that accountability, which we cannot give to the young people in society today, is the only thing that saved me, was getting in trouble and being accountable, because with a single mother who had to go do what she had to do and no father, I was left to do what I wanted. And in the end, I messed up. And it wasn't but the court system that actually helped me. And then the jail, where I actually realized this is not the life I want. You know, people are like, oh, you've been to jail? Yeah, I've been to jail. I was in high school. It's sealed, but I talk about it openly. You know why? Because it might help somebody else, but that no longer exists. We can't do that to young people. We can't. So those people aren't going to get the accountability that I got, and I don't think they're going to have the same chances I got.
And then you do your job here, and you're going to be called xenophobic or whatever, or you don't like immigrants, or you don't.
Not the case,
right?
But of course, because I'm enforcing the law,
right?
You know, it's.
So you guys' hands are.
No matter what you do, you're damned if you do. You're damned.
Your
if
hands
you
are really tied.
Yeah. So
and you can't speak up.
I'm only here because my boss said, "Come speak with me." Right?
You glad he said that?
Listen, at this point, I can retire in 6 months. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? People are going to look at me and say, he's got a point, or they're going to say he's an asshole. It's one of the two.
It's luxury beliefs that allow you to think you don't need law enforcement in life, because I've been to countries where it's broken down and it sucks. And so society, maybe not up here in the countryside, but most cities would fall apart in literally 12 hours. It would be absolute Mad Max chaos. Yeah. And that's the reality. And a lot of people, since they live in maybe a place like this, I'm not saying these people, but if society falls, law enforcement falls, you're looking at the cornfields. It doesn't really affect you as much.
No, and the funny part about living up here is even the people that are on the furthest extreme, they still, despite maybe not like getting pulled over, they still respect law enforcement up here, which is interesting. It's
on the furthest extremes, both sides? Or just one side?
I think on both.
Okay.
I think so.
Most people want it. They're just, in society right now, a lot of people are quiet in so many ways.
It's making things more difficult because
like
in our small agency, right now, we've got, I'd say it's probably 5% open that we could hire, right? So we're down 5% for staffing. The New York State Police, right? They get paid well. They are having trouble with staffing. Any agency in the country is having trouble with staffing. The Border Patrol, trouble with staffing. You're asking people to go out and do these jobs that other people don't really want to do in conditions that they don't want to go do it, knowing that one wrong move can immediately put you in a position where you could lose everything.
Looks like a new crossing, huh?
Yeah, they've done some work on it.
So up here at this sector, you have a lot of small crossings, huh?
Yeah.
There's a lot of this going on.
Yep. There's so many different roads that intersect so many towns on each side.
Right.
That to make it one point, you're talking about going 40 miles just to get to a border crossing to come back 40 miles. when all the roads are right here. So it's a matter of convenience for the American and Canadian people to have these.
So much activity here, are you seeing, or not really?
No. This is where it should be.
Yeah.
Right? This is where it should be, but it's not.
Do you think a lot of people are working over the border?
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I'm sure there's some, but I don't think it's a huge cross-border employment kind of like on the south. There's a huge population of corrections officers. The New York State Department of Corrections has several jails in the area, but as New York State continues on with their formatting, they keep closing prisons. And as they close prisons, these people that live in these areas, they can't remain. They have a choice of going to another prison if they want to keep their employment, but it just creates a hardship for these people.
So prisons are closing. That means what? You're arresting less?
I mean, we're
less criminals. What's going on?
You know, that's the problem I have with the use of numbers. The use of numbers. Oh, crime is down. Nah, I don't know if crime's down. What I do know is we've made crime lesser, so therefore there's more work that goes into a lower level crime, and law enforcement may not be spending their time doing that, or district attorneys may not be willing to prosecute. So therefore, those numbers, sure, they're indicative of less arrests because there's more work that goes into those lower level of arrests, so they're not being made. I'm not the smart guy. There's other people a lot smarter than I am, but I'm just out here giving my
What's
opinion.
it take for me to go to prison these days?
Oh, I think a lot. I mean, you can
Okay, what if I, in front of the mini mart, I attack somebody?
Yeah, no, you're going to get a ticket.
A ticket?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I'm going to bring you to my office. I'm going to say you're under arrest. Here's your ticket. Go to court. And then you're going to go home.
I'm not going to jail.
No, you would have to really hurt somebody. Yeah.
I punched someone in the face.
No, that's a harassment. That in itself is a ticket on scene.
Was there a time when it wasn't a ticket on scene?
So punching somebody in the face, that's a harassment. That's a violation level of offense. Now, if you cause injury, then you're getting into the assaults. But even then, we used to be able to bring you in front of a judge and arraign you, and that's all changed. There's a huge list of all the different offenses where you can no longer bring somebody in front of a judge. You just have to give them an appearance ticket.
Okay, so I go to the mini mart, I punch someone in the face, I give them a bloody nose.
Yep.
You're giving me a little ticket and sending me on my way.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
So there's no consequences. So if I'm designed like that, then I'm going to do more of it.
Of course, and that's the whole point that I was trying to bring about is the consequences are not immediate, right? You used to be afraid of getting arrested because you could potentially go in front of a judge and go to jail. Now, it doesn't matter because you're not going in front of a judge. You're not going to jail. You're getting a ticket. The ticket in itself is not scary.
How much is it? Something like that.
Oh, I mean, you could still potentially, if you had a huge record, you could potentially face a couple days in jail, but it's not likely. So you're facing a fine, and it really depends on the judge, depends on the jurisdiction. So if you break the law and you thought you were going to get arrested and go to a judge, but instead you get a ticket, where's the consequence in that? The consequence may come later, but it's not immediate. So therefore, there's a higher likelihood that you may rack up several arrests prior to any consequences being levied against you.
Do people know that? I guess they don't, because I'm asking the question. I didn't really know how it worked either.
Yeah, I mean, in New York State, people are a little shocked when they hear about it. People are like, why aren't cops doing anything? Oh, they are. Well, he punched somebody and he got released. Oh, no, he actually punched somebody. He got what we're required to do. We're required to give him an appearance ticket, and he's going to go to court at a later date. That's just the way it is.
What was this down here?
This used to be an old shopping mall.
When did this close down?
Oh, years ago. Occasionally, we get information that there will be some that'll hide out here until they get picked up.
So you have a bunch of clothes out there. Yeah, let's stop there. That's post-apocalyptic.
Yep.
All right, guys, I also want to tell you there's a lot of stuff that happens during these days, during these shoots, that I don't talk about. And so I have another platform outside of the YouTube channel. I'll leave the link down below. It's called the Inner Circle Group. That's where I do question and answers with you guys. Deeper thought processes about all of this information, because usually it's about the other person's story and learning from them. But, I'll spend the rest of the day after the shoot going to talk to different people and thinking through what I've learned. And I share it on this other channel. So we'd love to see you there. Link down below. Let's check this out. All right, so some break-in action. And here are the clothes. So they just come right over, right?
Yeah, so some of this could easily be from people coming down. The odd part is the different shoes that are in good condition. Homeless people wouldn't leave them. They would keep those, but these have obviously been through some dirt and some mud. So it's very probable.
I'm surprised the city doesn't have this blocked off. Like anyone can just be in here, right?
Privately owned, and they've gone after them several times to address it. The border is just north of here, about 2 miles. So if you start working your way through at night, you come down, there's plenty of lights here. So basically you don't even need GPS, you just focus on the lights. We caught cars over at the McDonald's next door, flashing their headlights into the woods, signaling, hey, I'm here, come on out. Across the street, you'll see Border Patrol watching us.
Right now?
Yeah.
That's all new, huh?
Fairly new.
Do you mind putting the camera out there? Let's put it out there. So they just ditched their clothes?
Yeah.
Or the excess, what is that?
It's hard to tell, but those are 3 separate pairs of shoes. If you come out, though, and you're trying to look like you didn't just run through the woods and hide, whoever's picking you up may have other clothes for you to put on. You dump them real quick, and then you're set.
So just cat and mouse.
Yeah, it really is.
How you doing?
Not bad. How about yourself?
Good. I'm making a video on the border region. Have you seen many people coming over lately or not really?
I see him a lot because I live right on the border. I live right across from the Roxham Road, so I see him come across by the families. But you know the man to talk to? Right in there, his name is Phil. He lives right on the Roxham Road.
Okay.
So he'd be the one to talk to. He sees more of it.
Thank you, Danielle.
You're very welcome.
All right, so Phil, give us the story for those that don't live at the northern border. Uptick in crossings, or has it gotten chiller, or what's going on?
It's pretty chilled. It's slowing down.
Okay.
Still see a few people here and there coming through.
Okay, so when was it really bad?
Last year.
It was worse last year?
Oh, yeah, before they shut down the border.
They shut it down?
Up on my road.
And the Canadians shut it down, right?
Yeah, but you still can jump it and get over.
Oh, it's easy. Yeah. Okay. And then what's the trajectory? Most come in here and then go to New York City, or what's the story?
They go like to New York City stuff and all.
So they'll have people pick them up here.
Yeah.
Go south.
Yeah. And if they don't have anybody, then they're looking for a taxi, and we got a couple taxis that'll come up and pick them up. And
no way, they'll come up from New York City?
No, from like Plattsburgh or something, and take them down.
How much is that, a taxi to New York City?
All depends on the taxi driver wants to charge.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Phil.
All right, you
have a good one. Yeah, you too. Take care.
You too.
All right, there we go. Another little piece to the story from Phil. That was interesting. Phil said that taxis will come up here.
Yep, even New York City taxis.
All right.
I don't know if you noticed. Did you see any taxi signs posted anywhere?
He said they have a collection of taxis they call.
Do they? Interesting.
Yeah.
So Phil calls for him?
I think so.
No, we like Phil.
You want Phil to do that?
Listen, somebody's going to call it. I just find it funny how we get New York City taxis up here to pick these guys up if it's not already pre-organized, and there's a lot of people making money off it.
Right. Well, he said there are some Plattsburgh taxis too.
There are, yeah.
But that's right. It's just an opportunity, right?
So, depending on who Phil is speaking about, is he talking about those that are already released from the Border Patrol station over here? Or is he talking about those that just snuck across the border that have not yet been processed?
I didn't hit him on that, and I don't know if he'd want to answer that one.
Yeah, so I'm assuming, because the Border Patrol station is, well, it's that building right there. Right by the big sign that we can't see, that's the building right there.
Yep.
So they literally go to this store or that store, and then they get a ride.
So this is downtown Plattsburgh?
Yep.
Looks pretty nice here, actually.
It's not that bad, and that's the problem is if you stay on the surface and you don't delve into what's going on in any of the areas you generally live, it's actually pretty peaceful. If you run in circles with those elements that overlap, then you're going to run into some problems where it's not going to be as pretty.
So, scale of 1 to 10, how big of a problem is it?
For America or for us?
Give us both.
For us in the area, I would dare say it's probably a 4 or 5.
Okay.
You know, because it is a drain on the local resources. There's resources that are being used that maybe could go elsewhere.
Okay, for the country.
It's definitely pretty high. It's going to be at least an 8, in my opinion. Again, it's my opinion. Any place, you wouldn't just let random people walk into your house if you didn't know who they were. You wouldn't let people go to your family reunion if you didn't know who they were. But you're going to let them come into the country and basically disappear, and you have no idea who they are, what they're doing. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind, and I think that's the biggest problem I have.
All right, quite interesting, guys. I've never gone to the northern border and touched on this story. I've done a fair amount on the southern border, though. Would love you to see those videos, too. Did some videos with sheriffs in Texas and Arizona. Really fascinating. And also, Customs Border Protection, cbp.gov. You can go onto their website. I'll put a screen in here somewhere on the video right now so you can see what I'm talking about. But the link down below, check it out. Very cool. You can see apprehensions on the northern border, on the southern border, what nationalities are coming into the country. It's quite detailed and easy to use, very interesting. Check that out. Thanks for coming along on that journey. Until the next one.